All right. It's the Salem Radio Network. Big interview. John McLaughlin is here. Americans for a Balanced Budget. John, first of all, good to hear your voice today, my friend. We have been talking on this show about these critical healthcare tax credits that Congress has to extend or they will expire by the end of the year. You've done some polling with your group, Americans for a Balanced Budget. The polling says over 70% of Trump supporters and 77% of voters overall want to preserve these tax credits. Tell us, why is this issue resonating so strongly, especially within the president's base?
Well, Scott, by the way, it's a pleasure to be with you. But I tell you, you've hit the nail right on the head, because all the way back in June 19th, we took the survey of 1,200 likely voters, modeled after the turnout of last year, of how they felt about this. And they supported, by the way, overwhelmingly, all voters support these healthcare tax credits, 86-8. And the reason is because who takes advantage of these tax credits in the exchanges? It's working class people who are not getting a handout, who may be working 2 jobs, 3 jobs, but their employer does not provide them with health care. So they have to go into the exchanges to buy health care, and they get a tax credit. By the way, a lot of the media, when they talk about this, they call it subsidies. Only in Washington, when you get a tax credit where you're being left with more of your own money, do they call it a subsidy?
Right.
I mean, it's amazing. It's a healthcare tax credit. What could be more popular among American people, that they get help to buy health insurance that they pick on the exchanges, that covers their bills? Because a lot of these working class voters that qualify for this, they're usually one paycheck away from disaster, where if they get a health care bill they can't afford, it's just really bad.
Tell us about how this really impacts rural communities, because as you're laying it out there, you're talking about working class voters. And if these tax credits go away, you could see ripple effects all through small town America. Is that right?
Right, because what you'd have is people with less health insurance. They then have to go for some emergency care, and the hospitals those rural hospitals have to take them. They can't turn them away, but nobody's going to pay the bill. So what'll happen is those rural hospitals will close. Doctors and nurses will leave the rural areas, and all you're giving them is a tax credit. It's a healthcare tax credit. You're helping them pay for their health insurance, and these are working people. These are, by the way, Scott, this is what we in the Trump campaign. Trump started this in 2015 when he declared for presidency. He went out there on issues of trade and immigration that the working Americans in the Sun Belt and the Rust Belt cared about, and he gave them the biggest and best tax cut in the history of the country.
Right.
And he just got it passed again. But in the meantime, you've got these tax credits that exist to help working people, get health care. And these are the voters that elected Donald Trump president. We changed the Republican Party from a country club party to the party of working class Americans. This is basically the caddies are running the country club. Well, caddies don't get health insurance from the country club. They have to go buy it themselves with whatever they earn. So if they get a tax credit that helps them, it's a great thing. So it's no surprise. And by the way, when we ask people about if you're more or less likely to vote for a member of Congress that supports this, it's 77% support the member of Congress, 73% with Trump voters, 76% with Republicans. And if somebody votes against these healthcare tax credits, they're 74% less likely to vote for that candidate for Senate or Congress. And it includes 2/3 of the Trump voters and 2/3 of the Republicans. We have to get our votes out again. And you want to discourage working class voters from coming out and voting in the midterms? This is, for the Democrats, this would be a brilliant step if the Republicans screw this up.
Well, you went right where I was headed, which is the 2026 midterm. It seems to me, and you well know this, that one of the Republican Party challenges is getting these Trump-motivated people to show up and vote for all Republican candidates. I assume it's your opinion that if you were to let these tax credits expire sort of take a bite out of these working class Trump supporters, they'd be far less inclined than they already are to turn out in the midterm.
Right. A lot of our voters are fat, dumb, and happy, but because Trump's president, they think he's fixing things. Although a lot of them, after Charlie got shot, Charlie Kirk, after he got shot, a lot of them are scared and worried right now.
Yeah.
But they don't. It's hard to get Trump voters to come back out when Donald Trump's not on the ballot. And if a working class person finds that their health care bill is going to double because they can't, if they want to keep their insurance, they're just going to get disgusted with things and walk away. And the Democrats, Chuck Schumer, Hakeem Jeffries, they'd be ecstatic to see Trump voters walk away from the election. And Republicans, we need to stop talking in Washington language where they call these subsidies. These are healthcare tax credits. And we want to, tax credits to buy healthcare for working people who work. These are not people on welfare. These are not people who are getting Medicaid. These are people who are buying healthcare insurance on their own that need the tax credits to help pay for it. And we need to change the language and let them know that the Republican Party stands for healthcare tax credits to make sure that working Americans have health insurance coverage.
I was looking at some polling last night, John, from Reuters Ipsos. This is recent polling, and the Republicans led on a great many issues: crime, immigration, foreign conflicts, economy, corruption, gun control, political extremism, and go all the way down. One of the few issues where Democrats had a small advantage was on health care. They led Republicans. Who do you trust more? Which party has a better plan? 34-25. I assume it is your opinion that Republicans could maybe take this issue back if they champion these healthcare tax credits.
Absolutely. And by the way, that Reuters Ipsos poll is always skewed against us. It's a poll of adults, not registered voters or likely voters. But in the meantime, going back to what they found generally, they're right. And you're right strategically. You've worked in campaigns. You know political strategy. And what we should do is what we want to do is emphasize our strengths, cutting taxes, creating jobs, keeping people safe from crime, et cetera. But then you want to take away the opponent's strengths. And Democrats, they should not be winning on health care. It's the Republicans that are standing for lowering drug prices. We're standing for transparency. So when you go to a hospital or a doctor, you know what the bill is. You don't get any surprise billings. But also, we're the ones we want healthcare tax credits so we don't have to pay for government-run health insurance. And that's ultimately what the Democrats want. They want a government-run health insurance plan where you'll never get to see your doctor and you'll just be on waiting lines waiting to get sicker or worse. So I think we got to realize this is really important for us to win on the healthcare issues. We've got to reaffirm these healthcare tax credits. We have to reaffirm them, keep them so working people are covered, so they don't have to turn to the government and say, "Gee, I got to go on Medicaid too." Right now the Democrats, they want to pay Medicaid for people that don't belong in the country, that aren't even citizens, and take away the tax credits for people that are working class or American citizens. I mean, it just, only in Washington would they get this messed up.
All right. So we know Trump voters, based on your polling, want members of Congress to do this. I assume the White House, the president, wants to continue this. So this will all be wrapped up in whatever the president and the Congress come up with to fund the government. Is that right?
I certainly hope so, because I know after we did this poll in June, my other colleague, Tony Fabrizio, who works for the president, he found similar results in July. And there's other pollsters that are out there testing this. And I think this is one issue where you should have bipartisan agreement, that working people that need to buy health insurance need to have the tax credits if they qualify so that they can keep their health insurance. It'd be a huge coup for the Republicans. It would be a huge mistake to let this lapse. And I think Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries are that devious that they, my old friend Pat Cadell, who worked for Trump and worked for Jimmy Carter, he used to say, Democrats are the crooked party, but the Republicans are the stupid party. And it would be enormously stupid to let these healthcare tax credits lapse, because we would end up paying a price at the polling.
All right, that voice,
the ballot next year.
That voice you're hearing, John McLaughlin, legendary pollster, polls for President Trump, representing today an organization called Americans for a Balanced Budget. And if you want to get involved in this, you go to this website, stophealthcosthikes.com, stophealthcosthikes.com, and you can tell your member of Congress to preserve these healthcare tax credits that will expire at the end of the year if Congress doesn't get their butts in gear and do something about it. John, thanks for coming by the Scott Jennings Show today. We'll check in with you, hopefully, from time to time, because you got your finger on the pulse of America. Thank you, sir.
Scott, thank you for the opportunity. And by the way, keep up the great work. You're a voice of sanity and truth in a very desperate country that needs that.
We're fighting them every day. Thanks, John.